I think one of the biggest things that I see when I've gone to houses that are being ready for sale is the space plan is just really not there. And it's just moving a piece of furniture sometimes can make a big difference.
Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. As always, with each episode, our goal is to inspire you through the insight and inspirational stories from your fellow real estate professionals. Now, before we get into today's featured interview, make sure you follow and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the list goes on. Also, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notifications for every time a new episode is uploaded. Lastly, if you or somebody else on your team has an awesome story to share, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to feature. All right, on to today's episode where we hear from the color whisperer herself, Jeanette Chasworth. With a background in interior design, she gives us her tips for properly staging a home for a showing and working with the clients to get them to understand the process. We also touch on how certain colors can change the mood of a room. I guess, just kind of starting out a little bit, could you give me a little bit of background on yourself, kind of where you're at and what you do?
So I am an interior designer. I have been in the interior design business for 26 years, and I have done a lot of things. I've been published. I am the color expert for Fabulous Floors magazine. It's hard to say. I have written a book. It's called What's Color Got to Do with It? Here you go.
Awesome.
You see it?
Yeah.
So it has been a best-selling book, and in it goes a lot about how color affects our lives. This is a big part of my experience with interior design and how it really changed my life. Mm-hmm. And so many of us are surrounded by color. Well, we are surrounded by color. We choose it or we don't choose it. Right. But the color has an impact on how we think, how we feel, and what we do. And so knowing that can make a big difference in having your house work for you versus it just kind of being there.
Right. So how long have you been doing the interior designing and, these color, I guess, consultations?
26 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've seen all kind of different trends.
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of tired of all this gray, honestly. But I think COVID has kept it here. It was on its way out and COVID has brought it back big time.
Right.
And we'll be seeing it for a little while longer.
Right. So our audience is mainly real estate agents. So I'd love to talk to you about what agents can do with their clients when they're preparing them for, the selling of their home. What are some of the things that you suggest for agents when they're getting ready for their photos to be taken and their showings to happen?
I think one of the biggest things that I see when I've gone to houses that are being ready for sale is the space plan is just really not there. And it's just moving a piece of furniture sometimes can make a big difference. The other thing is too much stuff on the walls and too much clutter. People think, so-and-so gave this to me, I have to display it. When you're selling, you don't want to see all that. Color, there are some people that say, you have to paint everything white. I actually have had some clients that said they purposely didn't buy the house that was painted all white because of that. You have to know your market on that. But I think having a color that suits with the house, I'm big on the personality of the client. In this case, you're looking at the personality of the home. So if you're dealing with a Spanish style house, you want to have at least a Spanish white or some gold tones. Yeah, it has to fit the style of the house. If you're doing more mid-century modern, then you want to have colors, is there brick? What colors work with the brick? So you want to look at the key pieces of the home and say, what goes with that? And how can we bring it out to make it shine more?
Right. So before we get into the actual specific, kind of like color matches and things like that, I think one of the things a lot of people run into are just talking to a client and say, we need to change this a little bit, because it is something that is very personal. Your home is very personal to somebody. So how do you get over that kind of wall, I guess?
Well, I think you have to approach it with a little bit of psychology, and it really is their first step of letting go. I mean, actually, them calling the realtor was the first step of letting go, but now they're really they're shedding themselves from the house. And ultimately it's about saying, hey, look, do you want to sell the house? You're going to make more money this way. It will be faster this way.
For that initial conversation, how should a realtor and how should an agent kind of walk into a home and view the home in terms of getting it ready to sell?
What I like to do when I walk into a home is I look at what I call the bones first, which is the walls. What's not going to change? The tiles less likely to change. The floors less likely to change. So usually you can compliment them on something there. And from there you can say, oh, and we can do this. This will make it look bigger. This will make it look, so it starts with just saying, hey, look, this part's done well. We can make this look really much better if we can do X, Y, Z.
What are some of the tips, or what are some of your kind of go-to colors to help promote a positive feel in a home?
So when you're selling like this, you do need to go neutral. And the feeling of neutral has expanded. So there's neutral greens, there's neutral blues, there's neutral grays, there's neutral browns. And that's where I really like to look at, maybe there's a fireplace in the living room. There's some neutral tones in that brick. Let's pull those out. And that way it's going to make the room look bigger. One of the things that I see, is people do too much contrast sometimes. I saw a room the other day and it had beautiful walls and the ceiling was really white. But the ceiling being so white, the contrast was so much that it made it look darker. If they took it to a softer white and not a stark white, then it would blend more, or even a little bit of yellow in it, it would blend more and it would make the room seem bigger. One of the things that I tell clients a lot too is there's this adage that lighter makes it bigger, and that's not true. What really makes a room feel bigger is the light. So how much light does the color reflect? Now I know that sounds kind of odd, but if you look at a color, you can have a white color or a very light color and it sucks the light into it and it's going to feel dark and dingy. But you can have a color that reflects light and the room's going to feel much bigger. I just did a healing room. It was a massage for a masseuse. And we found this beautiful green, but it had a lot of light reflecting from it. So while it was dark, it actually made the room look a lot bigger. So that's one key to look for. Now, not everybody's going to want a bright green room, but when you're looking at your neutrals, look for colors that actually reflect light. And so right now, gray is still in. I would say lean towards the gray greens more than the gray blues. Green's coming back in with all of this stuff that's going on. Green and blue are really healing colors. Green is emotionally healing and blue is physically healing. And so if you're going to go with the grays, I would lean more towards not just the purple grays, or the gray grays, but add a little bit of the tinge of green or blue in them. Mm-hmm. And I personally like a nice soft yellow or brown, a beige, but that's got a little bit more of the yellow tones. It's just inviting. And ultimately it depends on the style of your house too. And what's around you. If you're in the desert, you may want more of those desert colors. If you're in the mountains, you're going to want more greens. So you got to look around too. Right.
So you're talking about kind of mimicking your environment as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It all goes together. You're selling the house. And what plants do they have in their yard? What does the yard look like? What's their view out the window?
Right. Okay. Great. Now I like that idea. I think a lot of times people, excuse me, a lot of times people, try to bring in this whole different environment and attitude into their home when it really just doesn't mesh with where their actual physical house is.
One of my favorite colorists, his name is Donald Kaufman, Kaufman, and his books are amazing. And that's what he does. He just pulls the outside in and it creates such a warm, welcoming environment, whether he's using a lot of color or a little bit of color. And that's what I try to emulate when I do my design that's where I get my inspiration.
Right.
And He's got a website. You can look at some of his pictures, and it really is beautiful just by bringing the outside in.
Right. Stepping away from the color aspect of things, how do you properly stage a home so it's not so cluttered,
Sure.
but it also isn't so void of furniture that a potential home buyer can't see the life that the house can provide?
So most people have too much furniture. It's really about paring down, and you don't need to have the curio cabinet and this and that. You want to have a seating area. You want to have a dining table. If you look at state homes that are tract homes where they're selling, or model homes, there we go. There's a lot of little tricks they use. And one of them is they don't have a lot of pieces of furniture. And it's just, okay, here's a sofa and a couple chairs and a table. And they want you to see, how would you live in the space? One I saw did something really unique. They'd had a kids room, and the kids rooms are always really small anyway. So they took a crib size bed and they turned it into a four poster bed. And so people thought it was a twin, but it was a crib size, and that made the room look bigger.
Right.
So you want to be, people don't notice those tricks. Right. And you're not meant to. But you want to have the idea of how would you use the space. So if it's a playroom, you might have some toys out. If it's an exercise room, all you need is an exercise bike and a mirror. There's, what's that new one out? The mirrored exercise thing where you can do everything.
Yeah, the tonal thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, you can have a mirror and an exercise bike, and you give the idea this is what you can use the space for, because that's all they're wanting is a taste, a little bit of an idea.
Right. I agree with the idea that, like the kids' rooms and things like that, some of those extra bedrooms can be so small that you do want to kind of show off, you do need those little tricks to kind of help bring in the size of it. How do you work with a client that does have too much furniture? What are those conversations like that we need to kind of pare back a little bit?
So then you need to just say, let's start packing. Why don't we put some of the stuff in storage? It's a good idea. Most people, when they're really getting ready to sell, they're starting in the process. It's just encouraging them. It's a little bit like dealing with organization. As an organizer, you say, do you really need this right now? Mm-hmm. When was the last time you touched this? It's so easy. Stuff comes into our house one thing at a time, and you don't realize how much stuff you have until you have to start putting it in boxes. And so that's where I would just encourage the client, say, let's start packing up things that you don't need.
Right.
And once you start getting the ball going, they're like, oh, wait, I don't really need this. I don't really need that. Another thing, too, is I personally offer a consultation service for realtors, an hour, 2 hours of just, hey, how can we get your house to be more sellable? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is just, let's move stuff, let's remove stuff. And so if you got somebody who's really difficult and you're just like, I don't know how to broach it, say, hey, look, here, as realtors, you give gifts anyway. Here's an hour of a designer's time to come in and help them see it and let them, because that's our job, is like, how do you say, this is nice and this is your goal and this is what we're going to do to achieve it. Right.
That really kind of helps that idea of, I'm bringing in that you're not listening to me, you're bringing the professional in to do this. I'd imagine the colors that a person wears, a real estate agent wears, also affects the way a potential home seller or client, views them. What kind of tips do you have for the agents on what they're projecting out?
Sure. So one of the best tips I can tell somebody in sales is to get somebody to like you easier, quicker, to create that rapport quicker. You wear your eye color. And your eye color can be beyond, like, it looks like you've got brown eyes, but there's probably flecks of green in them or flecks of gold in them. So it's not like you're going to be dressed in a brown suit and it's boring. Okay. You've got a lot that you can play with. And that will help. So the more you wear your eye color, it just makes you more approachable.
Okay.
If you want to be more forceful, then you want to wear your power color. And that takes a little bit more discerning. The eye color one is a little bit easier. But I think for a salesperson and real estate and what I do too, you want to be approachable. You want somebody to resonate with you. And I know some people, designers are going to come in and, you have to do this and you have to do this and it's going to cost $300,000 and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't. It can if you want it to, but it doesn't have to. And I know realtors have their own stereotypes as well. So the more you can just be, make them feel comfortable. And that's the easiest thing to do is eye color.
Okay, great. No, I've never heard the eye color, tip. I know I've heard a lot of, the more, not so many bold colors and things like that, but the eye color is definitely a new one that I haven't heard before.
Yeah. And so this is the shirt you have on right now is actually a very calming color for you. It's a good color for you. And when you're looking at the eye color, if you really look, I've got green in my eyes, I've got gold in my eyes, I've got a nutmeg in my eyes. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of orange in my eyes, hence this. Mm-hmm. And so just look at, beyond what you put on your driver's license.
Right. Yeah. You have a lot of options in there.
A lot more than you think.
Right. I guess just kind of, wrapping up, where can somebody find, your book and your website and things like that they can kind of get some more tips from you?
Absolutely. My website is thecolorwhisperer.com. My book is available on Amazon, both in book form and Kindle. And I do offer a 30-minute free consultation if somebody would like to sign up. And I am launching a course on the color, it's called Celebrate Your Style. So it's to help somebody just change one room around, but they'll have the tools they need to change the rest around after they do that.
So I really want to thank Jeanette for joining us today. And remember, if you want to check out more of her work, go to thecolorwhisperer.com. So once again, if you think you or somebody else on your team has an awesome story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.